and the monkeys gained knowledge and went on to become man, full of Intel-inspired intelligence, like I am when I went and bought this thing off eBay the other day. So I know what this is, more or less. This is guaranteed working machine. It's a Pentium III. It's got some rather funky looking drives on it. I thought it was pretty reasonably priced, considering the price that just the cases like this go for these days. So I thought it'd be worth its value in parts, if nothing else, even if it's just the case and the drives. Probably worth more than that if you sold them separately. So I decided to go for it. I thought it was quite a funky looking thing. I like the slot loading DVD drive. I don't think I've got anything like that anywhere. And below that we've got what I guess is a fairly early CD writer, perhaps. So that's quite cool. I like the color scheme on this thing. I like the peach buttons. Peach. I don't have another machine with any peach on it. So that's quite cool. And it seems to have been built by some kind of system builder. There's a little logo there. Don't know who that is. Hopefully we'll be able to find out a bit more information, possibly about who made it. I know that it was made in 2000. We'll get to that in a second. At first I wasn't sure what this was. I thought it was part of the logo, but I actually think it's just a quality squiggle that they must use at the place that reconditioned them. A little squiggle that's just felt tip pen, so it'd probably wipe off. Bit of a silly thing to do on the front of a case, but what do you know? Yeah, down the bottom left, confirming that it's a Pentium III. Already know that from the description. I'll save the spec of the CPU, which is the only thing that I know. I don't know what other cards this might contain inside, but I do know that it's a Pentium III, and I know what speed it is, and that's pretty much it, and that it has Windows ME. Looking on the back, there is a modem, a sound card, and a graphics card of some description, which is interesting to see what they might be. And I/O panels pretty basic, a couple of serial ports, a printer port, a couple of USB 2s, and our mouse and keyboard PS2 ports. And then there's this, which is rather nice, handwritten quality control thing, so we can actually see that it's the 10th of May 2000. This thing actually passed its QA inspection before it went to the store. The name of the guy who even did it, I can't quite read that, P. Docken or something like that, but it's really nice when you get little personal touches like this, and you know exactly when it came off the workbench and went into a shop somewhere, possibly their own shop, I would imagine. So it's nice that the case should have two of these little thumb screws to keep the side panel on. One of them's missing. I think I've got a pair of matching ones somewhere. I've just noticed my light that I usually try and keep out of picture is like on there, so how very unprofessional of me. So we'll get the side off and have a look inside. I'm hoping there's not a lot that I need to do to this machine really. Inside it all looks pretty clean, and I can see there's some cable tidying going on there, which means it probably hasn't really been messed with much at all since it was first bought by somebody. And a bit of dust, but nothing major. We'll take it all out, have a quick look at it, and give it a clean up, I think. Yeah, look at that. It makes me feel ashamed at how I put PCs together. Look at that CD cable running across the back. It's all clipped to the side and cable tied to the card. Very neat and tidy. It's going to be a shame to probably break some of that neatness because, well, I'm not that neat. Cards are all out, and I'm going to have a look at these in a bit more detail once I've given them a bit of a clean, so probably we'll take a closer look as I put them back in. But yeah, it's going to be a shame to snip this fine cable management. To begin with, I was trying to get this. This is a drive cage which has the floppy in it and the hard drive, and it's got a screw, and it looks like the ones I previously got. You take the screw out and then it should slot out, and it wouldn't budge. There's this kind of flap at the bottom. I'm not entirely sure what that's for. It doesn't seem to have anything on the other side, maybe for securing another hard drive. But no matter how I tried, I couldn't get this drive cage to move. I was trying to avoid taking the other side of the case off, but that was the only way I could get it to do it. And the motherboard's on a tray. I always like that. It just makes everything so much easier to deal with. And finally, with all that, I still couldn't figure out how this drive cage moved. I'd taken all of the screws off the other side, so I'd expect it to not be fastened on the side, which it doesn't appear to be, but it still won't move, so I don't know whether I have to take the front bezel off and there's a screw there or something, but I couldn't be bothered. I've got to say, I do like this case. I like the sort of wavy front. It reminds me of some Packard Bell stuff. I've got a couple of towers that look kind of similar, though this one feels very, very well built, so it's a nice case to have. So yeah, everything's pretty clean. We've got the bits stripped out of the case, and PSU, we've got our funky drives and floppy. PSU's from a company called Hypro, and it comes in at a mighty 300 watts. And the two optical drives, they both seem to be pretty good quality ones. Both dated March 2000, so I'm guessing that these two were the originals that were put in the machine since it came out in May 2000. I imagine that it was one of these little companies that you picked from a big list of components and specified what you wanted. So we've got, this is a Pioneer DVD drive, front loader. So I guess people would want that because DVDs were just becoming a thing, but at the same time you wanted something you could burn on, and I guess burning optical discs was a fairly recent new thing, so they asked for an LG burner as well. And then we've got the motherboard. This looks like a pretty clean board. Has just a little bit of dust, so I'm probably not even going to take it off the tray. I'll just give it all a brush and we'll see what the processor is and what memory we've got on board. So the motherboard's from QDI. The model number's up there on the left, if you can see it past my fat finger. It's P6V693A Advanced 9 motherboard with a VIA Apollo Pro 133 chipset. You can't but hope. I was kind of wondering whether this might have duality support, but I guess that was probably wishful thinking given that I know what speed the processor is. There's a couple of sticks of memory in here, and we can see that it is PC 100 to 128 megabyte sticks, so 256 megs. We'll probably be able to improve on that at some point. May as well put this straight back in because this motherboard doesn't need much in the way of work and it's going to stay on its tray. So we'll get that in, and then we'll get this fan and heatsink off and take a look at the CPU. And we have a copper mine core, which is kind of what I thought it would be, running at 600 megahertz. So not the fastest CPU, potential to upgrade that to, I think 1 gig was the fastest copper mine. So at some point we'll probably look at that as well. So one slightly odd thing about this board, so it's got its one ISA slot, 5 PCI and 1 AGP, but it's only a 3.3 volt AGP2 slot for 2 times AGP, which is a bit weird because the Apollo 133A Pro was the very first chipset to support AGP4X, so kind of makes you wonder why they didn't put it on here. In reality, I don't think there's much difference between AGP2X and AGP4X because the extra bus width you get from AGP4X was kind of robbed and destroyed by other things like the memory bus on the motherboard and stuff like that. So from what I've read anyway, there's a good article on AnandTech that basically says the upgrade wasn't really worth it. It was more of a marketing gimmick than anything else, even though that extra bus width did actually exist. It also isn't the end of the world because there are a lot of cards that will happily run at AGP2X on 3.3 volts. I think even up to the Radeon 9 series in like the 800 Pro, I believe, would probably work on this board. For now, I'm just going to keep the machine exactly as it is and think about how I'm going to upgrade this. But in the meantime, I almost forgot, we can take a look at the cards that came with it. So this is the first one, the sound card. Yeah, another Sound Blaster 128, PCI 128, so not a bad card for this machine, mostly Windows, but this thing will do DOS pretty well as well using its sound fonts. Of course, the FM synth emulation, which I think is done in software on these things, is absolutely horrible, but it does have real DOS drivers, DOS mode drivers. Not that we care about it on this machine because it's got Windows ME, but yeah, I think I'm happy to leave this sound card in the machine. I think it'll do a pretty good job. And for graphics, we've got a Rage 128 Pro. I'm building up quite a collection of these things. pick them up quite often in various other machines and things like that. I think I've got about 4 or 5 of them now, but not a bad little card. I did a video about them a while ago, and yeah, it performs better than you might expect it to. So with the 600 megahertz Pentium III and the PCI 128 and this card, you kind of got like a neat mid-range gamer from the time. So I don't know whether this machine would have been bought for an office to play some sly games with, or whether it was bought for the home. It feels like a home machine. But yeah, so the stuff that's in here is okay to play a few games on, so we'll just leave everything as it is, I think. And finally, the most exciting card of them all, modem. So I'm going to put this back in because I've got so many of them lying around, they're just making a mess, so I'll put it back in. So get it all back together. Even the cable tidying is kind of looking all right. The cable tie is missing, but the cables are all nicely in their clips, and it still looks pretty neat. So it's basically back to the way it was when I got it. Time to find out if it works. I'm confident it will, because they said there was a clean install of Windows ME on it. So that's it all back together again, and you still need to clean off that green squiggle. Press the lovely peach button, see what happens. Yeah, so look at that. Trident, advancing with technology. That's the little logo that's on the case badge. So they had a customized BIOS with a little splash screen on it. So it's nice to know where it came from. I did have a brief Google when I made the video, but I couldn't find any information, so they're probably long since disappeared. And here we go into Windows ME. No sound, so it doesn't sound like there's any drivers installed for the sound card. So yeah, the machine does have a very clean install of Windows ME, nothing else on. Even the sound drivers weren't installed, graphics drivers were on there. But yeah, I'm going to keep it because I don't have a machine with ME on it. It would be nice to have one machine that permanently has ME on it, so I can mess about with it and maybe find out or relive some of those incompatibilities that we had back in the day. In the meantime, I've got the drivers for Windows ME for the Sound Blaster PCI 128. We'll get those on and see if we can get any sound out of this thing. Okay, that's all on. We're rebooting. Let's hold our breath. What do we got? Cool. So that's it, all set, all up and running again. Probably going to upgrade it, as I said, in the future to a 1 gig CPU and maybe a slightly better graphics card. But for now, I'm going to live with it as it is with Windows ME. We're going to load Doom. So yeah, I've got this set up using General MIDI for music. That seems to work nicely. I couldn't get it to work with the FM synth at all for this, or the FM emulation, but it sounds great with the MIDI, and yeah, Doom runs okay, so that's one DOS game that works. And the other game we're going to have a go of is Quake 3 Arena, just because a couple of people mentioned this. Somebody mentioned it on X, somebody mentioned it in one of the posts for the channel. Said somebody actually mentioned maybe putting Windows 2000 on this machine. I'm playing Quake 3 on it. Tempting, but I've got Windows 2000 on my IBM server machine, so we'll stick with ME, but we can still play some Quake 3 Arena. Now, I ran into an issue with this when I tried to run it. I've seen this before. It happens with some ATI drivers where it doesn't load the OpenGL stuff correctly, or they're missing from certain sets of drivers or whatever. So I happen to have another disk, which is a proper installation disk for the Rage 128 Pro. So I thought I'd give that a go and see if that gets us around this and gets the game up and running. And that indeed did fix it, which was my experience the last time I came across this with Doom 3. So it's just a case of making sure you got the right drivers. I don't know whether it might have just been the ones that came with ME that maybe aren't fully supportive of everything. I don't know. Anyway, I do have an official release of the Rage 128 Pro driver disk, and that works fine. So there it is. A reasonably priced nice little machine. I've had 2 really good buys off eBay in the last few weeks. Unbelievably, the 486 I made a video about a couple of weeks ago was actually slightly cheaper than this, and this was pretty well priced, especially given these days, if you look for a case like this, you're probably paying 70 quid on eBay or whatever. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. Gonna, as I say, leave Windows ME on it and enjoy having a play around with that. Possibly a couple of upgrades in the future. But yeah, that's it. A nice machine. And it's nice to have one from a sort of local, small scale computer store. It's still sort of got its logo and everything intact. I like that kind of thing. And also, I like the personal sort of signature of the guy who QA'd it back in whenever it was, May 2000. So awesome machine. I'm glad to have it in my collection. I hope you enjoyed watching me take it apart and put it back together again, get a little feel of what it's all about, and we'll probably be seeing it again at some point in the future. So I'm going to play out with me getting fragged horribly by bots in Quake 3 Arena. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope you join me for the next one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.